Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to Mondays with Mike. It is August, something, 16th, 15th, 2022. And so it's a Monday, obviously. Feels like a Monday too. I couldn't sleep last night. I don't know. I'm sure this happens to you a lot. It's just for some reason I just couldn't relax last night. And then I woke up way before the alarm clock and whatever. I'm trying to make it. So there's a few things I wanted to hit on today, real quick, and the first is what happened over the weekend, and it's a lesson I think for all of us, a reminder for all of us about how quickly things can develop. For us, living next to the Gulf of Mexico, this warm body of water, and if anything gets in there, um, it could intensify pretty quickly. I mean, you've got water temperatures of 86, 87 degrees. And if the winds are just right, you could definitely get things popping up and spinning up here pretty quickly. So in the case of what you're seeing on your screen right now, this is right there, an area of low pressure that started out by New Orleans, and it just kind of drifted across the Gulf of Mexico and actually got really, pretty impressive. The winds were not strong though, but it got pretty impressive looking when it moved inland to the south of Corpus Christi over the weekend. And now, you'll see here by this imagery, it really is very large. I mean, the cloud cover stretches from north of Austin down into northern Mexico. I mean, the system is really several hundred miles across, and it has been producing a lot of heavy rain. In fact, um, we could take a look at that here with the National Weather Service radar there out of both Brownsville and Corpus Christi. In fact, as of today, you're seeing here on the screen, there are flood watches in effect all over South Texas. They've already had a lot of heavy rain, and they're looking at an additional 1 to 3 inches of rain. In fact, their radar here, let's see, pull this up here. The radar out of Brownsville is still showing some flash flood warnings that are in effect here over around the Laredo area. And those are from these rain bands, the training rain bands that were associated with the storm as it moved inland. So why am I showing you this? Well, I'm showing you this because it could have just as easily been us, and when you see something as large as this, you're looking at this uh, visible satellite, or what's called geocolor satellite loop, could have very easily been here. Were it not for an area of high pressure to our north that kind of pushed it to our south, we could have been looking at this here. And it's important to note that to the west of Corpus Christi, they had about a foot of rain over the last 36 hours. So basically from midnight Sunday morning through to Monday morning, they had approximately 1 foot of rain, really widespread, 4 to 6 inches, and then some spots closer to a foot of rain. So, what would happen if that had moved over Houston? Big time calamity, right? We've been through that so many times. So the reason I'm talking about this is to say that, when we're in hurricane season, even though there isn't a tropical wave or a tropical depression or a storm that we're watching move across the Atlantic Ocean like we very often do, um, these things can happen very quickly. And the rain can be very heavy, and you know how things are around here. I mean, once it floods, it floods, and once the roads are impassable, you're stuck. So it's a good time to ask yourself, if this had hit us, if we did happen to get a foot of rain from a really fast moving sort of semi tropical system, would you be ready? Would you have the supplies that you would need to not leave the house for a few days? Would you have your medicine? Would you have food for the baby? Would you have food for your pets? Would you have enough food for the family to eat? Would you have flashlights and things like that if the power went out? But mostly for a flooding kind of event, which means you can't really leave the house. So it's a bit of an eye opener when these things happen. And so this isn't an incredibly destructive storm at all. Like I said, it's really not that much of a windstorm um, at all. I mean, in fact, I was looking at the winds; they're like 10 or 12 miles an hour. So it's really not that big of a deal, but it's the rain that really is the big deal. So we're fortunate in this sense that this one shifted off to the south. It was pushed to the south by high pressure. And we ended up actually having a really nice Saturday, right? Didn't Saturday feel kind of breezy and it was like comfortable? And that was actually because we were getting a northeast wind when the storm was kind of getting itself going over by New Orleans. Yesterday, on Sunday, the rain that we had was tied in with the system, and now it looks like we're sort of missing out on the rest of the rain. But just something to think about. Something to think about. What if something similar to this forms next week? Or what if it were to happen at the end of this week? Would you be able to cope with that? The other thing that I wanted to mention to you. Okay, so this is totally changing the subject. Is so okay, let me show you this. And this is sort of a shout out to the guys out there that may be watching or to the wives who have had to deal with this. So watch this. So over the weekend, our dryer went kaput, right? And it was in the middle of like one of my daughters was washing her clothes and I had my clothes in the washer and they were soaking wet. So here's the thing. So the dryer wouldn't turn on. So you go to turn on the dryer and it just went like that. Now, how many of you, I'm serious, how many of you would feel comfortable taking the dryer apart and trying to fix it yourself? Now, I'm sure all the guys out there are raising your hand like, heck yeah, I'm turn on YouTube, right? Well, that's exactly what I would do. So just a little story. Like when I was in college, of course, we're broke college students, my roommate and I, and the dryer went out. And so the drum wasn't turning. And by the way, kids, this was back in the days when like the internet was not that big. You couldn't get that much information on the internet. There was no YouTube or anything. So I don't know why, but I decided I'm going to take the dryer apart and see if I could figure out why the drum isn't turning. And so I open it up and I see that the belt is broken. So I went to a store. It must have been like an appliance repair kind of store. And because we had those back then, I don't know if they really have them anymore. But anyway, bottom line is I fixed it. And it wasn't really that hard. I mean, dryers are not that complicated. There's just sort of a belt that goes around the drum and then it connects to a motor down here. And, it's not that hard. So anyway, what I'm showing you right now is called a drum slide or a drum glide. And when the dryer wouldn't start, I said to myself, okay, I'm taking it apart. And then my daughter's like, oh my gosh, you're going to take the dryer apart? I said, yeah. So then of course she goes and tells my wife and, they're like, okay, Dad's crazy, whatever. But took the front of the dryer off, took the whole thing apart. And so I noticed that these things are on the top of this unit that like the drum sits in. And anyway, as you can see here, it's basically a $5 part, $7 part, but nobody has them. I went to the Home Depot, they don't have them. I went to Lowe's, they don't have them. It only cost $7. So I just ordered it off of Amazon. They arrived today. And I have to tell you, I'm very, very excited for the package to arrive in the mail so that I could take the cover back off of the dryer and install these things in there and impress my family by fixing the dryer. That is going to bring me so much satisfaction. There's some things I won't mess with, like plumbing. I don't know anything about plumbing. I know a little bit about electrical, enough to be dangerous, but this kind of stuff I really enjoy fixing myself. So that's what meteorologists do when they're not at work. They fix dryers. So if anybody has any advice for me, how to not mess up the dryer, then go ahead and please let me know. Oh, one final thing is, today is August 15th. August 25th is the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. It's the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. And so it's obviously a solemn anniversary, but it's also, sort of a collective, anybody who lived through it, anybody who's here, you all have something in common, you know, uh, different stories to share about how you made it through, the storm and stuff like that. And so we're going to be sharing a lot of that with you the week leading up to the 25th. And then on the 25th, we do have a special planned. I don't know all of the details of it, but it's going to be a lot. My goal, as the chief now, is to not throw too many X's and O's at you. It's like we've all seen lists of how many inches of rain fell and wind speeds and things like that. And all of that stuff is interesting. Like what I'm showing you right now is a map of potential storm surge, like a worst case scenario storm surge in a category 4, like Hurricane Harvey was. It's not to say that it was this bad, but it could have been, depending on where it made landfall. So, but my goal with the special is not necessarily to give you the nuts and bolts of explaining the hurricane itself, but more of the social shared, memories that we have, and to just, we all at the TV station went through it like you all did, and we had our own. I mean, I was here, my family was at home, all of us were here, our families were at home. It was a tough thing to go through, especially when there were evacuations and everything. So anyway, that's coming up on the 25th of this month. And then shortly thereafter, on the 13th, is the anniversary of Ike. Which, by the way, there was a mistaken story that ran on this weekend that said it was the anniversary of Ike, and it wasn't, and that was just a mistake. I don't know how that even got in the system. It's just one of those gremlins that just snuck in there. I have no explanation for it. But of course, I got on the phone and called the station, like, don't run that again. So anyway, that's what we have going on. I am recording this really quick in between some of my weather hits at 9. It's actually 9:36 when I'm recording this, because we have a meeting later this afternoon. I couldn't do this live. We have an important station meeting, the planning meeting and things like that. So for hurricane season. So I will let you all go, get back to your lives. So anyway, just be prepared. Be prepared. Things can happen in the Gulf of Mexico very quickly. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Look forward to a nice